Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll try to get going here. Thank you for turning out tonight for, I think it's number 32, our 32nd event in this Female Founders Series. I was going back through old emails, and it kicked off as an idea in the summer of 2016. My partner at the time, Sam Roach-Gerber, the former host here, and I kept having a series of meetings with really kind of interesting solopreneurs. There were women coming in saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we're thinking about, what resources can we get, on and on and on. And over lunch one day, we're like, something's going on here. Why don't we see if we can get some folks in a room, share their stories, and get more of our community involved. And that's really what the genesis was. And the first event was in January of 2017. It was on energy. And 31 or so events later, we're here tonight and so excited to partner once again with Hotel Vermont, which was our first call. We're like, we don't know what we're going to do, but let's do it here with you. And they said, heck yes. After that first event, this wonderful woman, Jackie, from RETN, which is the predecessor to our other partner, Media Factory, sent us a blind email. She's like, hey, this is really cool. I think people that receive our content over public access might really benefit. Do you mind if we partner on this? We're like, sure, you're going to tape it and distribute it? Why not? So at times, these programs are seen in 7 different states, parts of Canada, and we hope it helps inform, motivate, activate, demystify someone out there as an aspiring entrepreneur. My name's Dave Bradbury. I work at VSET. Tonight here with me, Jeff Robertson, Nicole Eaton, and Emma Baldoff. We try to get out of bed every day and go to work and take care of our co-working center, our 2 venture funds, and really our principal business is providing no-cost business advice. Last year was 377 folks like many of you that came in and trusted us with their story, their vision. And we try not to do too much damage with our advice. And we'll take some questions here at the end, and we'll kick that off. Please help yourself to snacks and drinks in the back. And for that, I think the VSET story is really about you. We try to be in the background. This is our 20th year as a nonprofit serving Vermont with partners like Middlebury College, Innovation Funds in the House, our friends at UVM and elsewhere. And we're so appreciative, again, of your trust in us to try to come up with resources that give you some sort of actionable advantage. So with that, Nicole, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's kick it over. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, there we go. So welcome, everyone. We have Olympians at the table, which is super exciting. So just because we're crunched on time and I have so much that I want to talk about, can you guys just introduce yourself really quick, your name, what you went to the Olympics for, maybe which one you went to, and then what you're doing now?
Okay. My name is Jennifer Kessy. I played beach volleyball, not huge in Vermont or Maine where I am. And so 2012, had a silver medal there, which is here, and you guys hopefully we can pass it around later. Fantastic time in my life, and now I'm a fish farmer, which is, totally different.
Nice. My name is Ty Walker. I competed in slopestyle snowboarding in the 2014 Olympics. That was in Sochi, Russia. I was 16 years old when I competed, so quite young for my sport. It was an awesome time. I spent 7 years on the U.S. snowboarding team, and that was when I was 14 to 21. So kind of formative years, a really fun and exciting way to grow up. And then I sort of transitioned out of snowboarding in my college years. I was pre-med in college, and now I'm a 4th-year medical student at the University of Vermont, set to graduate in May.
My name is Carissa Gordon Gump. I'm a 2008 Olympian in the sport of weightlifting. I am currently the executive director of the National Strength and Conditioning Association Foundation. It's a mouthful. We're based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, so I work remote and I go back and forth. I have the best of both worlds between Colorado and Vermont, so.
Amazing. I'm so excited, you guys. Okay, so to start off, I just want to get these questions out of the way so we can talk about life after the Olympics as well. But real quick, rapid fire, you guys have one word answer. You can try your best, maybe two. Okay, the first. What's one word to describe competing at the Olympics?
Emotional.
Overwhelming.
Exciting.
What's your favorite piece of merch that you got from the Olympics?
My medal. Yeah.
The Nike sneakers.
Ooh, do you remember what model or what type of sneaker?
There was a set of Nike sneakers, but probably we got maybe 5 or 6 pairs, just different colors. I know we did have like a pair of red swoosh Air Forces,
Oh,
which were
cool.
pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those.
I'd say my Olympic ring
Wow.
that I wear.
Cool. That's awesome. Are you still in contact with your teammates or friends from the Olympics?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. And was competing in the Olympics the ultimate goal?
Yes. Well, winning a gold medal was, but yes.
No.
Oh, that's a loaded. I don't think I can answer that in one question.
That's okay.
No, and then yes.
Okay, cool. Don't worry, we'll expand on these. I just
Yeah,
had to
you
get
can
these out of the
totally
way.
expand on that.
Yes, yes. And then I would like you guys to try to finish the sentence. The highlight of your Olympic career was?
Winning the semifinal match, which we had lost to this team 9 times in a row, and we ended up beating them in the semifinal of the biggest match of our lives.
Wow.
For me, it was landing my run during the event. I think I struggled with some injuries while I was there. I was kind of fighting the elements a little bit, and just to land and execute my run the way I would have wanted to was such a powerful moment.
Wow.
I would say making my first lift, my first attempt on the platform.
Wow. That's so cool. Well, thank you guys so much for answering that. I just had to get it out of the way. I am so honored that you guys are here, sitting and able to come to Vermont and talk about your experience at the Olympics, and more importantly, what you're doing now. I'm really excited about that. So to start off, I really want to start by talking about the discipline that you all had to have training. How has the training process for going to the Olympics or just being a professional athlete in general, how has that translated into what you're doing now? Carissa, do you want to start?
Sure. I would say that it's very similar because just being very focused and goal-oriented, instead of having a 12-week training plan, I have a different kind of plan now. There's always a goal. There's always something in the end. So yeah, I would just say the similarities are, regardless if I'm trying to lift a heavy weight or execute a project, the end goal's always there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we kind of all said the same thing, which was like when we executed what we had wanted to do at the time when it mattered. But I think that that's not like the story really of how you get to that level. There is so much perseverance, like ups and downs, you're day in, day out, like working on getting that feeling sometimes. And I think, in life, or as that's like translated for me later, honestly has just been like hard work and a growth mindset of like, I'm working on things, working towards my goals, hoping like that, this effort will pay off and like will, provide me with a similar sense of like satisfaction later on. But, day by day, just taking things as they come and like putting my efforts in the right place.
Wow.
That's putting your efforts in the right place. That's a good one. Yeah. I think for me, I don't really realize it all the time that I have that like intense, that I want to get things done, and I do that. And I have some friends, one's a potter and she has a farm, and, I start to plan stuff that we're going to do. And they're like, okay, Olympian, whoa, okay, and I think, oh, okay, I still got it, but I think failure, to be honest, is something you get used to, and then you grow from there. Like, I lost so many matches, and I didn't qualify for Beijing, and I didn't qualify for Rio. So I think just picking yourself up and moving on to the next thing, I think was something that I've definitely learned.
Yeah, I think it's a blessing and a curse. We're incredibly driven, but we're also very stubborn.
Very, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I want to elaborate on this. Specifically with setbacks, I feel like a lot of people in this room, specifically a lot of women, are often told you're not good enough or you can't do that. So how have each of you, it could be like through perseverance or through a community that you have, but how do you get past that? Like, no, I can do this. I mean, you started so young.
So young, yeah.
And all of you guys, like, weightlifting was very new in the Olympics when you went. So yeah, can you all just speak on that a little bit?
I think for me, I started as an indoor player, and they pretty much that my dream was to go to the Olympics in indoor. And I went to Colorado Springs. I did everything I was supposed to do. I was high collegiate player, and they just told me, like, you're too short. It's like, well, screw you, and I'm going to go on the beach, and I'm going to win a medal. And that's kind of what I did. I just found a different path. Like, as soon as I hear a no, I'm like, well, that's not going to happen, so I'm going to do it a different way.
Yeah, I would say probably similarly. I think two things that you each have touched on are really important. One is like finding people that are in your corner and that are always in your corner, no matter what. Like, you could have the greatest day or the worst day, and those people are always going to be like, I want you to be happy. I want, like, you to see the positives, like, never forget who you are and what you have, and, like, you can just use those, like, talents and who you are in a different way. That, I think, has always been a really important, like, part of, in general, like, me trying to find success. And then I think the other thing also is like the, ability within yourself too, to pivot into, if it's not through this door, then you're taking a left and finding the next one. Always being able to like adapt what your vision is to like, what is the next best vision based on, what's available to you.
That's good.
Yeah, for me, I would say, just think about all the times I had so many people like just knock me down. You're a girl. Girls don't lift weights. You're too short. You're too small. You're too young. I don't know. I just kept going and pushing through, and there's always so many things, just, again, not just with lifting, but like going to school and stuff. Like I'm in school for a doctoral program right now, and it's like, I had somebody say to me, like, are you sure you can do that? And I'm like, oh, can I do this? Like, they're like, well, you're a mom and you work full time. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. So it's a little bit of competitiveness in me, I'd say, to, try to prove people wrong, but also to show people that it can be done. But when I was driving here with my daughter, I was telling her just how fortunate she is to live in the times that she lives in now and having the opportunities that she has. And I explained to her that, when my mom was younger, she wasn't allowed to play sports. And I said, I think it's awesome, and I wish my grandfather were alive so I could tell him, hey, guess what? Your granddaughter's an Olympian, you know?
Yeah.
But I've tried to explain, you know, just how fortunate she is to live during a time where, you know, a girl can lift weights, a girl can wrestle, a girl can do these, you know, non-traditional sports for women, whereas, you know, when I started competing, it wasn't even an Olympic sport yet, and then like a year later it became a sport. But there was a lot of negative, you know, folks that were not supportive of me. I trained in a gym where there were guys across the gym that were, you know, yelling at us like, you took our Olympic spots and girls shouldn't lift weights, and so yeah, it's just proving people wrong. There's a little bit of satisfaction with that.
There's a lot of satisfaction in that.
You were like, let's
I
arm
love
wrestle.
that. So Ty, I want to just ask, we do have some younger people here. You obviously started at such a young age. Could you talk about what that was like being on a global stage and on a team with people who are older than you, and how you did stand up for yourself in that way?
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really interesting question. When I was first on the U.S. team, I was 14. I was like the only girl on the team at that point. It was like the inaugural slopestyle team, and there were 3 guys also named to the team with me, and all of them were, I think, 25 to 30 years old.
Where are your parents?
So that season actually was like more of a transition year. It ended up towards the end of that season, we had 2 more girls that made it on the team. But kind of in that first year or 2, I would say, I think really, honestly, what I did at that point was still just focus on like the things that were my goals and what I needed to be doing, such as like high school. So I would go train during the day. You know, I would basically do my job, hit the jumps, do the tricks, make banter with my coach, and then I would get home and, you know, do online school. And I think because I was like pretty regimented in that way and had responsibilities maybe even that other people like didn't understand or couldn't really relate to, I honestly think that like earned me respect on the team just by like still having a clear direction for myself. And, you know, I didn't need people like telling me what to do at that stage. Like I was, you know, living, traveling like with the coach, but solo. And it was kind of like my own initiative to be picking those things up. And I think maybe people just recognized that it was not quite so different from like how they also were managing their careers and going about their business.
Yeah. I mean, how did you get the confidence? Where did that come from?
Oh, I don't know. Even when I look back at like videos and stuff like that of when I was that age, I think like I was really like, pretty outgoing and bubbly. I think, honestly, what gave me so much confidence was to have something that I was so passionate about doing and also to be finding success in that. Like, it didn't really occur to me that I should be doing anything else because I was succeeding at something that made me so happy.
Yeah.
And then also able to be myself, like, by doing that. Even snowboarding in general is, like, a pretty expressive sport. So, you know, to like be praised for just, or, you know, be successful at something where really you're just like physically performing and doing something that maybe there's a little bit style to, but people are welcoming you. I think those things all give you confidence, the community as well.
Cool. Speaking of doing something kind of out of the ordinary, you and your husband, who's also was an Olympic volleyball player.
He played volleyball for France, yeah, beach volleyball.
You had children.
Yes.
So can you talk about that and how you decided to keep pursuing your professional athletic careers?
Yeah, so after the Olympics in 2012, I played one more year with April, my partner that I won the medal with. And then it was way different because I was like 36 at the Olympics. Like, you know, it was way different. Like when you're talking about like how you could handle that and all that. And like, I had been through that and I had lost and I had this and that, you know, like I had so much riding on this one time because I knew this was like probably not going to happen again. Anyway, it's interesting to hear your point of view. But yeah, so we luckily got pregnant with my sweet girl, Isla. She's here. And so I took the year off in about 2013, 2014. And I was going to be okay with retiring at that point. And then I started to watch volleyball during the summer. And I was, you know, feeding her and watching volleyball going, oh, I can do that still. And then like so crazy that 6 months after she was born, I was in Brazil playing in like a USA Brazil challenge, like with her there, still breastfeeding, like just amazing what you can do if you really, really want to do it. And I think at that point, I wanted to go for Rio. I had 2 years to do it, starting at the bottom, had to find a new partner, and barely missed out on that, which was unfortunate, but I got 2 years of traveling the world. She got to see me and play in world championships as a little baby, 9 months old, and it was pretty spectacular. And then I really retired. I got pregnant again with my son Cal, and I thought I was done. And I get a knock on the door, and it's April, and she asked me to coach her. She didn't have a partner yet, and she wanted to go for Japan and Tokyo. And I was like, you are crazy. Like, I've got 2 babies. Like, you sure? And so I got to do that. Luckily, it was amazing for a couple years. We took second in world championships. We were just a fantastic team. And COVID hit, and we were already moving. We had this whole thing. Like I had this thing right after the Olympics. That was going to be it. It was going to be my husband's time, you know. This whole time he's there and he's supporting me and he's there with the kids a lot at home when I'm traveling. And it was his turn. He was on the computer. He was sitting at a desk and he didn't want to do that anymore. And he would have waited another year. But when you have an opportunity, when your grandmother's 98, and she's the one with the fish farm, it was time for us to go. So we had to make that decision that I couldn't coach anymore, and that we were gonna have to move, and we did. So it's all these things that kind of push you in one direction, or, you know, I had a lot of great things after I had babies. That wasn't one of the best ones, obviously, being not going to the Olympics again. They ended up winning the gold, but yeah, it was amazing to do it, and the fact that my body could do it.
Yeah.
I do have a fake hip now, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Wow. Carissa, I'll start with you, but I want to ask all of you guys this question. It's going off of what Jen just said, of the fact that a lot of the times you have to make pretty big decisions, especially when making that transition of retiring. Can you talk about the moment that you decided to retire from your athletic career, and if it was hard, were you relieved? Like, what were the emotions going on? I know there's so many entrepreneurs in the room, and there's probably a lot of risk that had to happen to make the decision to start your own business, or to kind of just go forward and do something that's out of the ordinary. So would love to hear about that transition.
Yeah, it was emotional. As I said before, that's the biggest word I can describe my athletic career, was emotional. You know, I'd have days where I'd go into the gym and it'd be a great workout, and then I'd have days where it was not so great workout, and I'd get a little emotional and be like, I'm gonna quit, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, I'm just over this. And I had a teammate, his name was Giff, and he had recently retired, and I said, you know, how did you know, like, it was your time? And he's like, you'll just know. He's like, it's not gonna be the day you have a bad workout, and you go out and you sit on the, on the curb outside the gym and you cry. He goes, it's not going to be that day where you're like, that's it, I'm done, I retire, I'm over this. He's like, you'll just know. So similar to Jennifer, I came back from competing in Beijing and I was like, yes, this was awesome. I'm going to go to London. I'm going to train 4 more years. 4 years is a really long time. It's a really long time, especially when it's, like a physical thing. And I had said after Beijing I was going to retire, and I lied. And so I came back fired up, and I was a full-time college student for the first time in my life. And I was like, I'll just kind of, dabble with school a little, and then I'll go into the gym and I'll lift. And so kind of, riding off the fumes of Beijing and wanting to go to London. I trained, and it was January of '09. I was just, I don't know, I just was in the middle of a workout, middle of a set of squats, and I was like, I'm done. And I told my coach, I said, hey, can we go into your office? And he's like, yeah, sure, what's up? And I said, I'm done. He was like, you gonna come back this afternoon? What's going on? And I was like, I'm done, for real. And he's like, all right, cool. And he himself was an Olympian, and so he understood this whole process that you go through. And we have this thing within the Olympic movement called the post-Olympic depression, which is a very, very real thing, whether you make the team or you don't make the team. But Giff, who is now a licensed clinical therapist, he knew exactly what to say to me, and he was right. I just knew I was at complete peace. I have never second-guessed my decision. And I went back out of the office, I unracked my weights, and I left. I packed up my bag and I left, and I've never looked back. But I realized, other athletes are not as fortunate to be able to have that clean of a retirement. Others are forced to do it based on injury or, finances or training situation. So I was very fortunate how mine ended. It just took me a little bit longer to actually do what I said I was going to do after the Olympics. So that was my retirement journey. Though I will say, so we have what's called the United States Anti-Doping Agency. It's called USADA. And all athletes are subject to drug testing under USADA in order to compete at the Olympics or Paralympics. And I never submitted my retirement papers because it was just too much. It was just closure for me. And so a couple years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago now, I started doing some contract work with them as a athlete presenter with their education department. And they were like, hey, we never got your retirement paperwork. And I was like, here it is, it's coming. So I officially submitted my retirement paperwork a couple years ago, but that just really
I'm not sure
put the
I've done
bow.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So that really just kind of, that was final.
Yeah.
I submitted the paperwork rather quickly so that I could get out of the random drug testing where they watch you pee into a cup. I was good to go on that.
They came when I was pregnant with her,
Yeah, that's what
very pregnant. I was like, dude, come on.
So uncomfortable.
So funny.
I retired when I was pretty young also. Well, I retired when I was pretty young, rather. I was 21. So I do actually remember the conversation and the decision-making around that. I had gone to the Olympics in 2014. And then after that, I had a really good season, was riding probably better than I had. I ended up winning the World Cup that year. And then at the end of that season, I tore my ACL. And then it took me a while to recover from that. I ended up getting injured right as I had recovered from that again, and was able to ultimately ride with my team for probably a year up until the 2018 qualifiers, which was great. And I think I ended up having another good season. But between college and also, the injuries, I knew that, I was kind of putting in enough to snowboarding to stay where I was, but not quite enough to make it to the next level. And my results had kind of plateaued. Again, I was very young, so I think it's reasonable in the scope of injuries and even just time in general to like experience that. But I think in the context of the other things that I had going on, it was like I could either, put in sort of 50% of my time and effort and continue to get these like top 10, top 5 results maybe, but I would never be like probably the best person at this, or maybe the top 3 people who are truly committing their lives to like being the best athletes in the world. So I think for me, I was in my junior year of college. I went for the 2018 like trials and ended up being the one person like out of the games. And I knew at that point, like even whether I'd gone or not, just based on even how I projected I would do at the Olympics if I qualified, that was kind of my thinking. And it was that spring that I actually remember going through this weird email chain where they asked us for our like goals for the following season, and I sent them like all of my goals and like the things I wanted to be working on and like all of the trips that we would be attending, etc. And then it was like actually maybe the next day that I called my coach and I was like, in fact, I don't think that I'm going to be doing that. Like I do actually think that I'm going to retire. And it was a pretty weird conversation at that age because I think also, they're maybe not expecting it. Like a lot of the conversation was, you're so young, like you have so many years ahead of you if you want to continue to do this. And it wasn't that I didn't want to continue to do it. I just knew that, the overall scope of my life was kind of going in a different direction. And I didn't think that for the risk also of the sport, like really it was worth, kind of continuing on that path. That would be quite a hard path for maybe not the trajectory that I'd be hoping for otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was weird. I think I saw a lot of men on tour struggling with retiring big time. Like they didn't have something after, they hung on too long. It was something that I saw, and then the women, it was much more graceful. I don't know why. I don't know if it's that we could go into motherhood or we have a million things going on in our brain anyway. So, we could already think 10 steps ahead of what we wanted to do in the future. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to do it until it's not fun anymore. Like I'm a person who loves to have fun and laugh, and I wasn't the nicest partner the last year with my young partner. I was fine, but it wasn't nice. I wasn't having a good time. And I think that made it very easy for me to pass on that. Like traveling to the same places, wonderful. You're in Switzerland, but you're at the same hotel you've been doing for the last 15 years, and you're there for the week. And then you go to the next traveling circus, to the next one, to the next one. It just wasn't filling my cup anymore, and I just knew that it was time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine the emotions it also brings up just talking about that. Like that's a lot. Now switching gears a little bit, anyone in the room work for nonprofits? Not part of a nonprofit. Me. So Chris is the nonprofit queen. And I really just want to hear about, you founded Lifting You Up, and I want to hear about that, but also you help out so many nonprofits. And I just want to know, how did you get in the nonprofit sector, and why have you done all of this work? Go on her LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Why have you done all this work?
I love nonprofits. Like, they're my jam. I get so excited talking about nonprofits. Yeah, I've worked great at like 20-something years in sport nonprofit, but I've been involved with some other nonprofits outside of sport. I just enjoy helping people. That's what nonprofits are all about, is helping people. Whether it's becoming an athlete, or it's, helping at a food bank, or Humane Society, whatever. There's something good to come from it. So I founded not my nonprofit. I don't have a nonprofit. I founded my LLC, Lifting You Up, in 2017. I noticed that in the community that I was in at the time, a lot of the sport nonprofits were, all doing the same things, but kind of like struggling in certain areas. And so like just being a nice person, I'd be like, hey, can I help you out with this? Can I give you some suggestions or recommendations? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I helped a lot of people like pro bono and stuff. And then it was like, you should like get paid for this knowledge and this experience. And I'm like, no, I don't want to accept money. And so I actually like took on, I'm trying to think, my first client was it's an organization called Wrestle Like a Girl. And it was a former teammate who lived at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs with me. She was a wrestler. And she founded this nonprofit to get girls wrestling into basically like every state have it sanctioned. Vermont is, I think, one of like the last couple that's left. So I worked with her primarily on the fundraising side of things, just helping, understanding, donor stewardship and just the importance of stewarding donors. And so very early on, but they've been around now for at least 10 years. And then just by word of mouth, I started working with another wrestling organization, which being a weightlifter, a lot of the times people think I'm a wrestler, but I'm not. And that's called Wrestle to Beat the Streets DC. It was an after-school program where they found that kids tend to get in trouble after school between the hours of like 3 and 5, and the crime rates are higher. So wrestling was used as kind of a solution to help with that. So I did similar work with them, helping with fundraising, stewardship type of stuff. And I got to work with them throughout the pandemic, and it was really actually interesting to see how they had to like pivot their mission. And they'd have all the kids hop on Zoom at like 3:00, and they'd be like, how many pull-ups did you do? How many push-ups did you do? And they'd send them like a home kit so they could do like pull-ups and bands and stuff. So they had to completely pivot like the whole program because of COVID, because they weren't able to be in person. So yeah, and then I've worked here locally. I volunteered with a local food shelf for a couple years, and then when I went back to school in August of 2022, I was like, okay, I want to do everything, but I know it's not possible. So I kind of like put the brakes on my consulting with nonprofits, but I work in a nonprofit, so I'm still, getting fulfillment out of doing that. But I get to wear a lot of different hats in my role, and I just like helping people.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is, I just want to help.
I love that. Speaking of wearing multiple hats, can we talk about the trout farm and what is that like?
Yes. So the story behind it is my husband's grandmother she's French, and she married a French Canadian American, and they moved to Maine, and they were looking for a business in the 50s, and they found this hatchery, and they bought hundreds and hundreds of acres. It's absolutely stunning. My cousins have been there, and it's pretty magical. The fact that she started this is even more special, and she's still alive. She's 101. She lives by herself on the property in her own house, and she's just fantastic. Still has her very French accent, but there was an opportunity. Someone had rented the business for about 30 years, because no one in the family really wanted to take it over, and it was never really a big thing in his family. And both of us, like as an athlete, you're retired fairly early, more like less than you, but you have to have a career, and beach volleyball, and it's not like you're a basketball player. It's not that you're making millions of dollars like in tennis. It's enough to buy a house, it's enough to, if you do well, but it's not enough to retire. So you really have to think about what you're gonna do in your next life, and when a business gets a little bit like, wow, we could own a trout farm, okay, well, I hate fish. I don't like touching fish. I'm from California. I've been in the snow twice. It took a little convincing, right? And we visited every summer. And we went in the winter, and I said, okay, I think I can do this. I still don't touch the fish that often when they're alive or anything like that. We have our roles, but and he didn't know anything about trout either, at all. And luckily, we had the opportunity to apprentice essentially for the guy that was running the business for a year. So my husband was still at home working, and I would go down and I would just try to learn as much and ask as many questions. He was a fish biologist, which makes more sense for someone that's running a hatchery. But he wasn't great at business, and that's why he kind of ran it a little bit into the ground. And so being someone that understands like aesthetics and understands like how you have to deal with customers a little bit and how you have to, call people back and stuff like that. So that's been fantastic. But we started at nothing. We had no client list. He didn't have a client list. And so he's just like, well, kind of, link your phone number to mine and hopefully people call. And so our whole business is stocking ponds in Maine. And who knew there was that many ponds in Maine? And that people love trout, and they absolutely call. They call and they call all year long, and they want their trout. And it's something that they do every year, fall and spring. And we've just kind of taken it in stride. We're moving the business a little bit into restaurants. We're also plant-based, so we don't eat any meat or fish. So we have some ethical concerns for us being someone that cares very deeply about how animals are treated. We do not want any fish to die. We've been to a couple other hatcheries, and you see, just like what you think you see at a hatchery. That is not what you see at our hatchery. If one fish dies a day, we know, and it's not something that we take lightly. We keep everything very clean. We don't use any medicine. We have food that is not bycatch at all, so it's plant-based food for the fish. And we're one of 2 hatcheries in the entire country that do that. But we took a big hit. We took a hit financially because we weren't going to give that to our customers who don't really care that much yet, but they will when we let them know what they should be caring about. And so it's been that kind of business where we're kind of just like flying by the seat of our pants and keeping fish alive.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. So Ty, I wanted to talk to you about your sponsorship with Red Bull. I think you still are the youngest person that they've partnered with. At the time, you're 14.
Yeah.
Right? So could you talk about just what that partnership looked like and how you manage that? I know even for me, working in partnerships, like you have to make sure both sides of the street are happy. And so I know that they were giving you maybe what you wanted, but you also needed to perform for them. So what did that look like at such a young age?
Yeah, so I think I'm the youngest person to have been sponsored by them because when I became sponsored by them, they instated a rule that was no longer allowed. So at that age, I was encouraged to like go on the podium at these professional events and like crack open a can of Red Bull and drink the Red Bull. And I don't know really, I think, how much further the endorsement could go from me as this like 14-year-old girl drinking Red Bull all over the place. So I think that ended up being like the wake-up call for them of being like, I think we want athletes who are a little bit more seasoned in their career before we're going to like actively have them really be endorsing our products. We did get an absurd amount of Red Bull shipped to my house that my mom wouldn't let me drink. But honestly, apart from, the marketing element, especially like in that 14-year-old age, I ended up staying with them, I think, until I was like 19. So, kind of grew past that. But I I think early on, you know, a lot of it was really just the like helmet branding, and then they really were very supportive, and they still, I think, are, of their athletes in like these high performance centers where they have athletic trainers and nutritionists working with the athletes, people who will help you recover from any injuries, physical therapists. They have spring and like camps every year where they'll have jumps set up. You know, they're shooting you with a speed gun to tell you like how fast you're going off the jump. Just really world-class like training facilities. So that was like a huge benefit of working with them when I was younger. And then later on, you know, as you're endorsing them, like they will give you a certain like contract salary, but then also a big part of it too is like incentive based. So, you know, the better you perform, the more like you get in return from them. Is typically how those partnerships work.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense. I can't imagine doing that at such a young age.
Nope.
Yeah, I know. So the last question I have, and then we'll open it up. I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So you all are doing incredible things now, but we have a room full of people who might be in the middle of facing a big decision or need to take a big risk. So what piece of advice would you give the audience during that time of transition? What would you tell us?
I mean, for sure pivoting, right? And you have your end goal, and that end goal can change. And so I just think it's make sure that you're not so stuck and like, I have to have this. This is coming from someone that had to have the Olympics, right? But I went a lot of different ways. But I think if you can really focus on being flexible and listening to everybody, you know, taking advice from everybody if you can.
Yeah, I think like having a really goal-oriented like approach and mindset is huge, but if that goal like doesn't work out or truly falls through in some way, like kind of practicing acceptance and just thinking like my next path or the next option or the next, you know, possibility is no worse for me than that would have been. Like, I don't know that to be true, that outcome, that, you know, future. I can't be convinced that, you know, this future is going to be like legitimately worse for me. So really trying to like, in those moments, which are so challenging, and really like take the most, I think, from people sometimes, to try to come back to like, I can see these possibilities for myself. Like, I still, like I said, I'm the same person with the same faculties and skills. Like, I think that this future could be just as bright, and XYZ things will provide me happiness, and like always kind of focusing on those positives and being able to like accept where you're at and maybe let the vision of what could have been go a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say be flexible. I can often think of times where I was dead set in my ways, and you know, it didn't go the way I wanted it to, and I kind of had to pivot and go a different way, and I'm like, wow, that actually turned out a lot better than what my plan was in the first place. So be flexible and don't be, you know, too set in your ways, because something else actually better might be waiting for you.
That's so good. All right, let's open it up. Emma has the mic, so feel free to.
Oh. You have one down front.
Do you want me to turn it? Is it on?
Testing. Oh. It was off. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. First question.
Hi, yes, I'm Charlotte. And my question is, basically what I'm gathering is like maybe we all have confidence until a certain point in time. And maybe something happens where we kind of lose that confidence. It sounds like a lot of you on your Olympic journey found it again in that work. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that kind of story that maybe a lot of us, you know, as young, vivacious women are like, nothing can stop us, but then the world gets in the way. So that's kind of the general theme that I'm hoping you can speak on.
I'll go. I think for me, I've always had this. My husband always watched me play and lose sometimes, right? And then I was like, just wasn't my day. Sometimes I would get really upset, but rarely. And I would just say, I guess it just wasn't my day today. They were better. And I had a good way of then, go out and have a beer and be able to forget it and be able to realize that I get to play tomorrow. And I think if you can look at it like that, well, I guess, shoot, that just wasn't my thing. And now I'm going to move to this. I think it's just not a knock on your character. And I think that's hard when we take things personally, because I take a lot of things personally too. And it's just not a knock on your character at all. And if you can get past your own ego of thinking I'm not the best at this and just say, it was easier for me to just, it wasn't my day, and I'll play tomorrow.
You guys have anything
I
to
was
say?
to say, do you want us to all answer?
If you want, you don't have to. Whatever you want.
I'm trying to think how I would respond to that.
Sometimes you really can find yourself like down bad in a moment. Everything that you thought like that you wanted, or that this was going in a certain direction, and there's something that really like falls apart in front of you. And I think, for the same reasons that you're so passionate and motivated towards your goal, like that's why those moments can be so heartbreaking, or, can kind of impact your sense of like maybe who you thought you were, or, really like take a toll on you emotionally. But I do think, I would honestly say to like let those things be short-lived, like not, to remind yourself that those things should be short-lived, like not, I hope that I find my way back to myself, or I hope that in the future, I can find the confidence again, but remind yourself in that moment, like that already exists, and you have the confidence, like you're already that person. You can kind of make that transition happen, like on the same day that you're let down or the day after, as long as you're able to remind yourself, like as soon as you can, like this is just, something out of my, this is standing in my way, but I'm still me, and I'm still like going to make it through this, and in the way that I approach the other things in my life. Like I'm going to make it through this with power and with like, happiness and all the other things that I would make it through other things.
So two things come to mind. One is, I think it's a meme or something, and it's like, what people see, and it's like a straight line. But what people actually don't see is all the other things that happen before you get to the end. So no journey is ever like, it wasn't like we all woke up and we're like, we're going to the Olympics. It was years and years. One of the taglines was like, it's not every 4 years, it's every day. We don't just show up and make the Olympic team. Like we've got to put the work in all the time, 365 days a year for many, many, many years. So that comes to mind, that, it's not going to be a straight shot. It's not going to be easy. The other thing that came to mind was the days that I had that were like down days, I would always have to remind myself, like, I had 29 awesome days of workouts, and then I had one crappy workout. Like, there's so many good things that happened that one workout, like, that didn't mean I was a crappy athlete. Like, we all have bad days. So, focus on the good, because there was always more good days than bad days. Oh,
My daughter.
Hi, I'm Alba, and I asked my mom this earlier today while we were having lunch, but I told her not to tell me because I wanted to know here in front of people, because I knew they probably wanted to know. What did you feel like when you finally knew that you were actually going to the Olympics? All those years of putting in all that work, what did you feel like?
Oh, great question, honey. I mean, I started my Olympic journey when I was young and thought I was going to go in gymnastics. And so it had been a long time. I always knew that was something I wanted to do. I'd watched the Olympics, and cry all the time, everyone's stories and how amazing they were and everything that they had gone through. The boring ones were the ones that it went like this, right? Like, wow, you're just good. Okay. That's not going to make me cry. And so that also gave me some solace. But we were in China. And so let me go back a little bit. We were ranked 6th in the world for Beijing and didn't go to the Olympics. We had a country quota. You only get 2 American teams that can go, which is fair. I'm fine with that. The other countries cannot. They are not as big and don't have as much money. They have to have the opportunities. But I was number 6 in the freaking world and didn't go. My teammates were number 1 in the world and number 5. So we missed out by 30 points, which is like placing, 17th versus like 13th, like it's really close. I remember that day very well, and that was heartbreaking. And I remember I cried for 10 minutes. And then my partner looked at me and said, "Nobody died." And I said, "Okay, yep, you're right. Then we're done, But I remember being in China on the other side, and we knew we had to win this one game. I think it was second round or something, and it was against a team that wasn't great. But man, I think that was the most pressure I think I've ever felt, was in that game in China, no one watching, on a side court. And I think we just fell to the ground, and both of us just were the happiest I think we were in sports ever at that moment. And yeah, that was the moment. You had another question for me too, though. Oh, it sucked. Big time. Still sucks sometimes. I'll be honest.
That's something only an Olympian would say.
You win the bronze and you lose the gold, and it's true. I was on the medal podium. I was still bummed. I was really bummed. Like you lose the match and then you go to the bathroom and you got to put your outfit on and you got to come out and you're in front of 16,000 people and the TV crews and all this, and you have to look like you're happy. And this is everything you've put into this one moment. And it could be your last match. It doesn't have to be this one moment. But I looked at the team that got 3rd. This is when it changed a little bit for me. I looked at the Brazilian team, who was number 1 coming in and had beaten us 9 times, and they should have beaten us. And they were crying tears of joy because they were on that medal podium with a bronze medal. And I just was like, suck it up, and this is still really awesome. I still got to hear our national anthem because the gold medalists were American. So it really was this bittersweet moment, and I still am bummed that we lost.
I actually had not exactly the same, but I did also have the experience of like one time when I made the Olympic team, I was so thrilled. And then the next time I didn't make the Olympic team, and how crushing that can be. Like for the second time in 2018 when I went, I think similarly, I was ranked like 12th in the world at that point, but there were only 4 quota positions for the US. We were very strong. And even though I was like 5th in the US, they obviously allocate spots to other countries. So I do remember specifically sitting at home during that Olympics, watching the competition and just thinking like, I know that I could compete with all of these girls. I know that, I could do X run on this course, like I should be up there type of thing. And it really is hard to be sidelined like that, especially for things that are, really like just the way the games are laid out, like the rules that are completely outside of your control. But everybody works within confines. Like that happens in the real world all the time. There are like legitimate structures in place that might prevent you from, having something that you want, even if you think you deserve it. So again, kind of acceptance of like, what are the realistic like limitations placed on a certain thing, and finding yourself okay with that. On the other side, though, making the team is really, really exciting. I think that's like another moment maybe that had like made me the most proud was, definitely leading up to the Olympics. Like everybody said, was the Olympics the only goal? Maybe not like for your whole career or for your passion for snowboarding, for example, but like definitely leading up to the Olympics, that's your only goal. Yeah. So to kind of go through like years of the training and, being kind of also like groomed in this way, you're set up to be like that person on the team and to, deliver for your job, and to be able to like say that you did that and you executed and you did that not only for the other people who might have expectations, but more so for yourself, that you were like able to handle the demands of that position and like fly essentially. Like it's a pretty fun feeling, pretty cool to let yourself like to recognize that like that's the like what you have managed to accomplish.
So my story, I'm going to kind of like back up. When you asked us before about like was going to the Olympics the goal, and I said no, but then yes. So this kind of goes into this. So I was 17 when I was invited to live and train at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, not 14, but still very young. I was the youngest athlete on complex. I was still in high school. I actually grew up in Essex. One like weightlifting program in the entire state, and my PE teacher happened to be the one that coached it, and he saw me in class and was like, "You're fast, you're explosive, like you should be a weightlifter." And so he kind of like, diamond in the rough, like he picked me out and I lifted weights, and we all thought it was a phase, and it never ended. So when I was 17, I moved to the Olympic Training Center, and my training partner was 10 years older than me. Her name was Tara Knott. She's the first ever Olympic gold medalist for weightlifting in the world, because 2000 was the first year for women's weightlifting to be introduced into the Olympic Games. So you'd think a 17-year-old and a 27-year-old like training together, like, what a great idea. Well, I mean, it made me grow up really fast. Like, I went from training in a middle school gym to training with an Olympic champion. But I was still like a 17-year-old. Like, I was like, yay, I'm lifting weights. I'm like away from home. I get to live in a dorm. I have all this food I get to eat. And, I was just like, I was there. It was fun, but I wasn't like laser focused on like the Olympics. I was like, oh gosh, I'll never be in the same class that they're in. I'll never be an Olympian. I competed at the Olympic trials in 2004. We took 2 women that year, and I think I was like maybe 6 or 7. So I mean, I was like close for someone who was like, yay, I'm having fun and just lifting weights, like not like laser focused. And then in 2006, I tore my labrum, and it was at that time, being in the environment that I was in, like we had a lot of other sports that were training at the Olympic Training Center. And so I saw injuries would make or break athletes. Like that was the deciding point in my career, like, okay, I'm gonna take this serious, or I'm just gonna keep playing and lifting weights. And weirdly enough, the first day after my surgery, I went to PT, and I had a new ATC who's in the room. I'm not going to call her out because she lives in Vermont, weirdly enough. But I walked in, and it was her first day on the job, and she got stuck with me, which I'm sorry. And working with her and then my coach in sports psychology, it really made me recognize like, okay, this is kind of possible. Like, I could make the Olympic team. And I remember people saying to me, like, you're just now figuring this out? Like, what have you been doing here all these years? And so I made a plan that, you know, if I competed at the trials in '08 and I didn't make it, I could look back and be like, I did everything in my power and it just didn't pan out. And the great thing with weightlifting is, like, you either lift the weight or you don't lift the weight. It's pretty easy. So I got laser focused in that last, year and a half. I had my shoulder surgery July of 2006, and Olympic trials were May of 2008, and I knew I had that period of time. I was a horrible patient. I didn't listen to Lisa. I did my rehab, but then I would go and do overhead stuff, and I shouldn't have done that stuff. But I had, and I'm sure a lot of you in the room have this, is I had imposter syndrome, big time. And I still, people say, oh my gosh, you're an Olympian? And I'm like, yeah, I am. This is really weird to, put myself in this group of women that, I looked up to, they were my role models growing up. And, they're my, Olympic family. They're my, we call each other our Iron Sisters. They're, people I will always be friends with. So yeah, long story short, I never thought I'd make the Olympics. It wasn't on my radar. And then something in me just clicked and was like, all right, let's do this. And then when I actually made it, I legit, I was in shock. I've seen pictures I don't even remember taking with people. I was in shock probably for at least a day or two. It just was surreal. So
I feel like when you do make the Olympics, you finally have that one piece of that one recognition and excuse the younger years, but you finally have that moment where you're I am 100% that bitch. Yes, I did actually. And you kind of get to be wow, actually, all the training, all the things where you're put up to the challenge, but you don't you're striving to succeed. You finally have that moment where you're that actually is me, that's doing that has done it, and that has sort of reached this level, which is such a cool, prideful moment. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thank you guys for being here. I had a quick question for Ty specifically. I would love to learn more about your decision to go to med school and how your experience has been there, and if you know what you're planning on specializing in after med school, and any advice you may have for someone who is in college right now and thinking about medical school in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for your question. I started college shortly after I'd gotten injured for the first time that I mentioned earlier. I tore my ACL, and then, I had surgery. And I think I remember at that time, I really enjoyed just the ways that the physician, kind of a typical story. I enjoyed the ways that the physicians, were knowledgeable. They had a skill set. They were able to, perform a job that really made an impact on my life. And that really kind of had me thinking, maybe when I go to college, I'll think about medicine. But really what kept me in medicine definitely was all of the background that I'd had through my career in snowboarding in terms of health. We do work with mental health providers, we work with athletic trainers, we do work with nutritionists, we work with people, we understand the orthopedics injuries, all of that kind of knowledge actually does carry over quite a bit. So that was really helpful in making my transition into college. I realized I did already have a language for health and wellness, and I could kind of continue to use that and move forward in that path. Another thing that I know really made an impact on me that I took from snowboarding and kind of shaped my transition to medicine was just the community that I relied on so much when I was younger and training and away from home. People really went out of their way to support me and share knowledge that made an impact on my life. Teach me different recipes, teach me the way that they did this, the way that they traveled, the way that they like navigated each of these, countries and various like just life skills. And having to like be the sponge that absorbed that all, but also be pretty thankful for the people that were like truly teaching me that, I think kind of motivated me in terms of like thinking about my career, that I wanted to be someone who like had a knowledge base or had a skill set that I could like educate others with. And if someone had a question, like I would, have an answer or teach them maybe like how to navigate that. And that's definitely what you do as a doctor. People come to you with their complaints and you like either offer them, lifestyle interventions or just talk about different ways that you could manage this problem, maybe prescriptions, maybe there's surgeries, maybe, a whole range of things that you could do to intervene. But it's all about like talking to the patient and helping them like address their problem, and using like your knowledge set, obviously, to help inform those conversations and inform the patient. I really have loved like going into medicine. To me, it's similar to snowboarding, although not really, but it's similar in the sense that you are like, or in the sense of like it doesn't really feel like work. It just feels like something I'm really interested in and engage in, like conversations I'm like interested in having with people. And, if I'm going to spend my time in some way, day by day, this is like the type of field that I'd like to be like engaging in those conversations and pushing forward science, etc. I think it's a really worthwhile like career path in that sense. If you're someone who, is looking for like a sense of community and place and to make a positive difference like through education, it like is really, a great place to do that. And for myself, I'm going into internal medicine. So that'll be adult medicine, dealing with like organ failure, infections, things like that. I'm interested in cardiology, but I have to kind of wait till later in my career to specialize. And I'm actually staying at the University of Vermont, so I'll be starting there as a resident doctor next year.
Hi there, I'm Ananya. I'm an undergraduate student. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. So I've seen some statistics that say 90 to 92% of women in C-suite positions have played sports on the college level or up, which I think is a really interesting and powerful statistic. But it also brings up ideas of effortless perfection myth, the idea that everyone around you got there through a straight line, but you know that you didn't. So in a world that profits from powerful women doubting themselves and pitting themselves against each other, how did you view your competitors and how did you stay focused on what was for you without becoming distracted by things that you think you would have benefited from that other people get to show and show off?
Great question. Wow, for me, indoor volleyball is so much about your team, and there is some awesome volleyball players. I have been so lucky on almost every team that I was on, high school, college, some professional teams afterwards, that it was just girl power, I think I got really lucky. I also picked a college that had like 2 female coaches. I surrounded myself. I made it part of the culture as well. My thing was, we had some maybe toxic seniors on the team, I was going to create something that wasn't toxic. I was going to make sure that everybody felt welcome. Everybody knew that they could come to me if they had a problem. That it was just us against everybody else. I'm not a great person to talk about other teams. I was pretty tough on other teams because they weren't on my team. But I think after the games, I was someone that would absolutely sit down and have a drink with you and be, hanging out with you. I think during the game, you did not want to be on the other side of the net from me, but that was because that's how I needed to win. But definitely afterwards, I made it a point to always see them in the elevator or wherever we kind of cross paths to say hello. Like there was one woman that failed a drug test that was definitely not her fault, and she had to be suspended for a year, and not one person reached out to her. And I remember just emailing her immediately, and she saw me a year later and she said, "You're the only one that emailed me." And we weren't even friends. We were competitors for years. But it's just remembering that we're all human and that someone does need that little bit of a smile sometimes. So I tried to not make it toxic off the court, I suppose.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this, and I think it's kind of unique to the sport that you're in. I actually had a conversation, one of my close friends, she's a 2-time judo Olympian. Her name is Hillary Wolf-Saba. We had breakfast this week, actually, and we were talking about the differences in sport. So she's a judo athlete. She's a combat sport athlete. Like, you don't want to be friendly or interact with your opponent. Like, you're going to beat the snot out of each other. You're not going to be best friends and buddy-buddy. So, like, combat sport, that's, like, one thing. Really whereas with, like, weightlifting, it's an individual sport, but in the environment that I was in, it was very much so a team atmosphere. We had between 10 and 12 of the best female weightlifters in the United States in that gym. I lived with my competitor for 4 years. These were girls that, we were fighting for slots to make the Olympic team, to make, world teams and stuff like that. But we had a really good dynamic, I would say. Like, everybody was very supportive, very mature. It was just a unique environment. I don't ever really recall, nobody was, other than the guys yelling at us across the gym early on in 2000, about taking their Olympic slots. Like, it was always a very supportive and encouraging environment. It was also the days before, like, social media was a thing too. So, like, we were all together and we saw, like, the ups and downs of people's training. We knew what was going on. Whereas now I feel like athletes are very, like, transparent, and they feel like, I don't know, with social media, like, I've seen athletes post after a competition, like, feeling like they owe an explanation, like, why they didn't compete well or whatever. And I don't know, for me, it kind of bothers me. I'm like, you don't owe anybody an explanation. Like, I don't know why you feel like you have to take to social media. So I'm very glad I competed during the days before social media was even a thing, because I kind of look at it more so now as kind of a distraction for athletes, but just like another factor to take into consideration for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe things like confidence and also teamwork are like things that, athletes definitely learn that could benefit people in a business field. Obviously, you can get those skills in through other avenues. I definitely think that, at worst, like, if you don't have a good relationship or a good perspective of, like, one of your competitors, it's like anybody, you don't have to, like, necessarily respect their style or, like, the way they go about doing things, but, like, maybe you could respect, like, their hustle and the risks that they take on, and, the ways that they, like, put themselves up to challenges, because I think, yeah, even in the business world, like, the same rules would apply. You might not agree with their, like, exact take on things, but you can definitely, like, respect that they are, a powerful woman or, like, motivated towards their own ambitions.
Yeah. Well, this is a perfect segue to just closing the conversation. Before we give them an applause, I want to shout out just a really exciting thing for all of you guys. Salt and Grove in Stowe. Jenna's here. But they are giving everyone a complimentary class. They have Pilates, they have yoga, and so you can see these QR codes around the room. It will explain how to get it, but They are an amazing community to plug into, and they're all about just supporting women and fostering a community of mindfulness and moving your body and being active. And so if you guys should all take advantage of this complimentary class, but it's more than just taking one class, but it's meeting women who have this exact mentality of supporting each other and respecting the grind, respecting the hustle. And yeah, it's in Stowe. So when you scan the QR code, you can scroll to the page that has their logo, and you have to fill out a quick form with your emails. But yeah, so can we just give a round of applause to... Thank you all so much for being here. They're going to stick around for a little bit to chat if you want to see
Yes.
the medal. It's so heavy.
You should. It's cool.
It's really cool. But thank you all for coming, and we're really excited to hang out and chat.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.